Hello everyone, welcome to the Solo Gaming Spotlight. Today we're going to take a deep dive into After the Virus's The Long Cold expansion. I played through every scenario, and if I were still undecided on whether to get the expansion or not, these are the questions that I would want answered. 1. Does this expansion actually improve the game? 2. Does it add any new meaningful mechanics, or is it just more of the same stuff? 3. Is it a must-have expansion? And if it's not a must-have expansion, is it a worthy battle, or is it just a wasteland? Now, I played through every scenario and endless hordes and waves of zombies, and I'm going to tell you where the game shines, where it stumbles, and whether or not you should have this in your collection. Let's get to the table. Okay, as I answer the questions presented throughout this video, let me touch on a couple things as well. One thing I always appreciate in games, when the mechanics tie into the theme, and I think The Long Cold does this well. It continues right where the base game left off, giving you little snippets of flavor text that set the stage for the scenario. And the goal of the scenario usually represents pretty well what the flavor text had provided, though some missions are a little more abstracted than others. For example, there's a scenario where you're stockpiling supplies for a future mission. And in-game, you'll be using your safe house card to stockpile those supplies. And after you've gathered all your resources, you need to get a vehicle so that you can go ahead and drive away and try and find a safe place. That's cool. Or in another mission, you're scavenging in a brutal snowstorm and everything costs more to retrieve. Makes sense, right? Everything's buried under snow, harder to find, so they add that little extra challenge. And it's little things like that that I appreciate. So I think it does a great job of reinforcing the theme through its mechanics. And though it's not a necessity in games for me, I do enjoy when they do tie together. Another thing I want to touch on is that for a deck building game that you're relatively doing the same thing every game, scouting cards, killing zombies, wash, rinse, repeat, that the scenarios don't feel repetitive, at least not to me. The Frixelius family, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has done a good job at mixing up the goals of each scenario and tweaking a thing here and a thing there to keep it interesting enough for me to keep playing. Some missions feel totally different from others. Sometimes you're desperately trying to scout for specific items. Other times you're forced to shuffle all the zombies into the scouting deck, which creates a completely different challenge. And I like that it kept me engaged, and I never felt like I was just playing the same scenario over and over again. Now that being said, difficulty can fluctuate depending on what character you play. You know, a mission where you find a vehicle, or you need to find a vehicle multiple times, is obviously going to be way easier if your character starts with one in their deck. But then you might have another scenario where you need to find facilities and another character has the keys that give them the advantage in that one. Now, did I ever feel like a scenario was unfair? Not really, but I did find that some were way harder than others, just depending on how the zombies showed up and whether I was able to find what I needed in time. And yeah, I'm okay with that. I like a challenge, but I can definitely see how it might be frustrating when you're 40 minutes into a mission, things are going well, and then boom, bad draw, game over. It happens. For me, that's part of the fun. Losing 8, 9, even 10 times makes that eventual win feel so much more satisfying. Now, if that's something that frustrates you, you're already going to know from the base game whether that's your thing or not. So what does this expansion actually add? Well, the biggest thing is that it improves the campaign structure. Now, I know the base game technically had a campaign, but here they introduce aftermath sections to all the missions except for the chapter finales. Meaning some of the cards you scout and play actually carry over into the next scenario. And I love this. It adds a sense of progression. Like if I worked hard to get a flamethrower in one mission, I get to start the next mission with it. That's awesome. Or maybe I set up some key facilities and now they're already prepared when the next mission starts. That's the kind of thing that makes a campaign feel connected rather than just a bunch of missions strung together. Beyond that, The Long Cold introduces 67 new cards, but instead of dumping them all on you at once, they drip feed them into your campaign. Before each scenario, you draw 4 random cards from the new expansion deck, which means every campaign playthrough will have different tools available for you. And the zombie cards? Yeah, there's 40 new zombie cards. And they bring some fun variety. Some of them have cool effects, like a level 1 crawling zombie that's actually 2 zombies. But they don't attack immediately. You get a choice. You can deal with them this turn, or you can hold off until next turn. Or there's a post-apocalyptic street gang that forces you to either fight 5 thugs or destroy 2 of your prepared cards to escape. It's not just, here's a stronger zombie, it's, here's a new kind of problem to deal with. And the best part, you can mix these cards into the base game campaign, making that feel fresh again too. So now I can answer the first question presented. Does this expansion actually improve the game? Yes, indeed it does. Now, let me touch on the not so happy. Okay, I've touched kind of on this already, but let's talk about difficulty. Look, After the Virus has always had an element of luck, not like the luck of a random dice roll, but some games you can try and prep as best possible, and you can still get overrun by zombies as the waves increase. If you spend all your defenses taking care of zombies that round, and you get another handful of zombies, that could easily end your game. But it's not going to happen all the time. Sometimes you're going to get 0 zombies, so make good use of that turn. That's kind of part of the fun of the game to me, and the long cold doesn't change that. Sometimes you're just going to draw more zombies than you can handle, and you lose. And then you go right back at it. The biggest potential frustration that could be problematic for some is with longer missions. There are some scenarios that took me over 45 minutes, and you might not realize you've lost until past 2/3 of the way through. And that can be rough, especially if a scenario, is on your 7th or 8th attempt and it's that time consuming for you. For me, the victory's just sweeter, but it may be frustrating for some and it could be problematic, so I just wanted to point that out. But all in all, I don't feel that it's unfair. Now let's talk about components. While everything else is solid, there's one issue that stood out to me, the cardware. They're not a cheap quality, but because of the black border that runs around the edges on both sides of the cards, it seems like little nicks stand out way more than they do on other cards in other games, especially for a game that requires constant shuffling. Now, I don't sleeve my cards. I already struggle with shuffling as it is, so I know they're going to wear down over time. If you do sleeve your cards, this won't be a problem for you whatsoever. But if you don't, expect some wear that may seem to catch your eye a little more than usual. Everything else is totally fine though. Character boards are good, rulebook, no issues, just that the normal nicking and wear and tear stands out a little more due to the black and white contrast on the edges of the cards. So, is the long cold a worthy battle, or is it just filler content? Honestly, I think it improves the game. The connected scenarios, the new zombie variety, it all adds more replayability and an overall better feel and connection to the game for me, better than the base game. So, is this expansion a must-have? For me, it's a yes. Now, if you've never played After the Virus, go ahead and check out the base game. And if you like the base game, this is an easy recommendation. So yeah, I'd say it's a worthy battle. That's it for my thoughts on the Long Cold. If you played it, let me know down in the comments below. What are your thoughts? Was it a worthy battle? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more solo board game content like this. Until next time.